Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel as I take a closer look at another 1/6 scale Sideshow Collectibles Star Wars action figure. Now, just before Christmas, I was very pleased to review my Return of the Jedi Darth Vader figure from the same company, from the same line. And, well, if you're going to have Darth Vader, then you've got to have Luke Skywalker, surely. So I pulled the trigger on the deluxe version of Luke Skywalker from Return of the Jedi, and I'm very excited to share my thoughts with you today. Okay, so as ever, let's start off by taking a look at the packaging. Now, this packaging is a little more slimline, a little smaller than the Darth Vader packaging. After all, that was a much bigger figure, and I will do a scale comparison at the end of this video. But now, Sideshow do tend to be quite minimalist with their Star Wars 1/6 scale figures, but we do have this central image up front and centre of Luke Skywalker, of the figure itself, looking pretty cool in its action pose. I think looks really quite good, nice photography here, and whilst it's not the most colourful packaging in the world, this is still pretty presentable and quite displayable. Sadly, there's not much to write home about when we look at the side panels. We have the Disney logo on there, we have the Star Wars logo, and that's basically a lot. But things take a much improved turn when we look at the back of the packaging. We have this fantastic image, this display image of the figure in action, looking quite cool. I think they've done a nice job with this, replicating a scene from the film. This is much more colourful and a lot more displayable. This is only the outer sleeve though, which is removable of course, so you slide that away, and underneath we had this protective card, which again, much like the back of the packaging, is a really nice staged image of the action figure in an action pose. It looks really nicely lit, and it's a really great image. And underneath that, of course, we have the figure in its protective plastic casing. Of course, we can see all the various accessories that it comes with as well. And the design of the side panels on this inner packaging is a lot better. We actually have some more photos of the figure itself highlighting the various different costume changes. Now, they're not the best images in the world, and sadly they're not the most colourful either, but hey, it's something. Now I have to say, my first impression upon opening the packaging and getting my figure out, I was hugely impressed with this figure. Now, I do have some reservations and I'll pluck at those as we go throughout the video, but if we start off by taking a look at this head sculpt, I think this is a pretty good likeness in the main, but it's not quite there. Now, I'm not sure what it is that's off kilter, because it seems to have all the nuance, all the details, even the small scar and the various freckles and things like that. It seems to have all this detail, and the eyes are really well done actually. They have an inner glow to them, which is fantastic. And yet there's something that just doesn't look quite right, especially when you look head on like this. Now, it tends to be more favourable in different lights and from certain angles more than others, and this is definitely the least flattering way of looking at the figure, I think, but there is definitely something ever so slightly off with this. Even though it has an awful lot of detail and very nice paint apps to make this lifelike and pretty faithful to what we see on screen. One of my favourite things about this figure though is the costuming, because he actually comes with 3 distinct outfits, which is very well thought out and quite generous and pretty darn cool. So no matter what version of Luke you like from Return of the Jedi want to have on display, you've got it all covered here in this one figure, which is pretty awesome. And this first outfit, the one that he comes with in the packaging, is the one we see from the start of the film when he's on Jabba's sail barge. Now he has this extra little tunic going over his standard black costume that we see later on in the film, and I think this is really nicely done. Obviously they've given it a different tone. This is more of a sort of bluey grey kind of colour toning, which works really well. It differentiates it from the black of the costume underneath, and this is quite nicely tailored. Now I appreciate here it's not quite tight fitting, but it does wrap around more snugly than I've got it at the moment, and I think this looks pretty good, pretty accurate to what we see on screen from what I remember, and I'm pretty pleased with this. Now the material they've used is actually quite thin, and that's surprising, but it's also fairly flexible and allows for a lot of range of motion with the articulation, and I think this looks pretty good. I can't really fault this, and I like that the cummerbund around the waist actually clips into place. The front of the vest is folded down. Now I did think you'd be able to hold this back into place, but you can't, and it seems intentional because it's almost like there's a magnet there forcing it back into its default position. Thankfully, he does come with an awful lot of different hands, as we'll see a little bit later, and each one is very nicely sculpted. There's a lot of detail here, you can see individual veins, etc, and I think this looks really good. And also, you can see an example of the fine stitchwork here around the cuffs as well, which is very nicely done. And I was particularly pleased with the boots. I think these look absolutely fantastic, and they're made of a very soft leather material, which is really pleasant. It's got a really nice texture to it, and best of all, it's actually articulated, so there's actually a break between the top of the boot and the bottom of the foot there, allowing for maximum articulation, as we'll see in a moment. And that's our cue to look at the articulation. So he has a ball joint at the top of the neck, allowing that head to spin all the way around, lean left and right, very healthy distance here, which is fantastic. And of course, it will also nod forwards and backwards a pretty good distance too. He has ball joints and a butterfly wing joint at the top of his arm there, so the arms will lift up and out, they'll come forwards and backwards a pretty good distance, which is great. There is a double jointed elbow there, allowing the hand to reach all the way back to the head there if you really want it to, and he also has a ball joint at the wrist there, so that hand will rotate all the way around and it will also hinge forwards and backwards. Now there is a slight discrepancy between the tone of the hand and that ball joint, and it does ride up quite a bit above that cuff, which is unfortunate, but otherwise it's okay. Now, there's more ball joints in the torso, so of course he can spin from side to side, he can lean left and right, and yes, he can bend forwards and backwards a little bit as well. More so back than he does forward, but this is pretty good range of motion here. He's got ball joints in the hips, the legs will kick out to the side. There are some restrictions there because of the tightness of the pants, but it's enough to get what you need done. Of course, it will also rotate from side to side, which is great. The legs will kick forwards and backwards, again, noticing the limitations there due to the material that's been used for the legs. There is a double joint in the knee, so that lower leg will kick all the way back there, which is fantastic. As you can see, you can get that right back, which is brilliant. And then we have that ball joint in the ankle. Absolutely superb stuff. It's almost invisible as well. I love this. So of course it will hinge forwards and backwards and it will rock from side to side as well. And he comes with an absolute ton of accessories. Virtually everything you could think of that Luke Skywalker uses in Return of the Jedi, he has it here. First up, he has an additional 9 hands. Now, to be fair, out of these 9, 7 of them are his right hand, but there's enough here to cover every possible scenario you can think of. He's got gripping hands, he's got closed fists, he's got open hands, he's got battle damaged hands, and he's got gloved hands as well. This covers pretty much every possible look you could think of for this character, and I think they've done a great job here. But that's not all, because he also comes with an alternate head, and this is the Endor head when he's on the speeder bike. This is really, really cool. He also has his belt and pouch, his lightsaber, both sheathed and unsheathed, and we have his blaster. But the fun doesn't stop here, because he also comes with his Jedi robe as well from the opening of the film. This is a lovely piece of material. It's kind of felt, it's got a really nice quality. It's very lightweight but very flexible as well, and like I said, it's just got a really lovely texture to it. And it's also quite large. And when you put this on him, wow, it's got a lovely little clasp that really holds this very tightly together, and it's absolutely phenomenal. You can have this hood right over his face if you wanted to. You can mold this to whatever position you want it to be in, or you can have it down, you can have the cape open, and as I said, it's got quite a big wingspan on it, and it just looks great. You can wrap this right the way around him, or you can have it over his shoulder, and it looks absolutely fantastic. I love this cape. His blaster is also really cool. I love the detail on this thing. We see a number of different paint apps. It looks worn, it looks like it's been battered and scraped and it's seen a bit of action, and I just think it's a fantastic replica of the prop we see on screen. And of course he has no problems gripping this at all. This is absolutely fantastic. I think it looks awesome, and whilst I don't tend to think of Luke Skywalker with a blaster, it tends to be more with a lightsaber, I think this is a really nice display option because it looks so good. But let's not forget, he does also come with his lightsaber, and I think they've done a tremendous job of this. I love the sculpting, it looks pretty screen accurate from what I can tell, and I love the paint apps on this. We've got so many different colours, we've got gold, silver, black, and it just looks absolutely fantastic. It also has a little metal clip as well that moves that you can hang on his belt, as we'll see a little bit later. And once again, he has absolutely no problems holding this in multiple gripping hands, actually, and it looks absolutely fantastic. Now, the one I've got on display here, of course, is the battle damaged hand. I think this is really cool, lovely detail on this, and if we look a little bit closer, we can see all the fine paint apps, we can see the top layer of skin, we can see the blood and muscle underneath, and then we can see his metallic hand underneath that. I think this looks absolutely brilliant. And if we take that top tunic off and replace it with his belt and pouch, we can see a lot of fine detail on this. My only quibble might be that the actual belt buckle is black here, and I'm pretty sure it's silver in the film, but I might be mistaken on that. But we can see individual studs, which is great, and of course that pouch, which again you can see that lovely fine stitching there, it doesn't open, but it does slide along, so you can position this however you want it. And to be fair, this actually fits quite snugly around his waist and looks pretty good. So once again, I'm really happy with this. I think this looks really good, and I like what they've they've done. Now in terms of that little hook on his belt, of course you can hang his lightsaber on there, and that just goes on nice and easily like that. And I have to say, it looks pretty cool. Now the only thing I'm not quite sure of with this lightsaber is that it looks a little bit out of proportion. It looks a little bit too big than it does in the film, but I could be wrong on that. Nevertheless, it does hang from his waist really cool, and it does make it a really nice display piece, and I think this looks absolutely fantastic. Of course, this is one of the more iconic costumes that he wears in the whole trilogy. This is the final battle costume, and I think this just looks absolutely brilliant. And there's yet more, as he also has his Endor cape as well. This is absolutely fantastic. As I said, they've covered all the bases here when it comes to looks for this character from this movie. I don't know what more you can ask for. Again, I really like this cape. I think it looks pretty true to what we see in the film. There's two little holes that actually strap the belt around the whole of the body, holding this together, pulling it tight to his waist as it does in the movie. And I think it looks pretty good. If we look at this head sculpt, again, I don't think it's 100%, don't think they've quite nailed it, but it's pretty darn good. Like, we're talking by degrees here. This is a pretty sharp likeness otherwise, and I really like what they've done with it. I think the helmet, the addition of the helmet here, actually sculpting that in was a really smart choice. It looks right proportionally, and I'm really glad that we got an alternate head. I really like the paint tabs. I like particularly some of the silver dints that we see, the scratches around the top of the helmet, making it look worn. I think it looks really good, pretty authentic to what we see on screen, and they've done a really nice job with this overall. An interesting detail from the movie that I never noticed until I had this figure in hand is that his cape actually does have a hood on it, and in the case of this figure it actually will go over the helmet as well, and when it does it looks perfectly great. It looks really good in proportion and it's quite effective. And then finally, I just want to talk about the extended lightsaber, and in particular that lightsaber blade. The point of join isn't actually the blade itself, it's actually the top of the lightsaber that can be swapped out for either extended or unextended, and I think that works a treat because it keeps it consistent and it's really difficult to see the join, which is absolutely brilliant. And if we look closely, you'll notice that the blade itself isn't just a smooth blade, it's actually ridged and it's actually sculpted in there, so you can get the effect of a living weapon. It's very, very cool. I think they've done a nice job with this. Of course, it's a translucent plastic. I think the green is probably the right shade of green. It doesn't light up, of course, and that's a shame because companies like Hot Toys definitely do this. But nevertheless, I think this is pretty nicely done. It's also a very long blade. It actually surprises me just how long it is. And you'll notice the end of the blade is actually also pointed as well. So it's actually a little bit sharp. And then finally, I did quickly want to do a scale comparison so you can see how this Luke Skywalker scales compared to Darth Vader. Now, in my previous video where I looked at the Darth Vader, I did comment about how tall he was in comparison to other 1/6 scale figures, but I wasn't really able to demonstrate that. So now you can see this for yourself, and wow, this is absolutely fantastic. You can see just how tall and how massive Darth is in comparison to Luke, and that's exactly how it should be. As far as I'm concerned, this looks like pretty good scaling to me, and just really emphasizes the awesomeness and the intimidation of Darth Vader, which is entirely appropriate, and I think they look absolutely great together. I can imagine creating some really fun displays with these two. Just having that height differential is just brilliant in itself, but then being able to actually have them lock swords or lightsabers is even better. Now the only nitpick I have to mention here is that with my Luke, the one thing I did notice over time is that his lightsaber hand, his right hand, that arm is quite loose, so, and it is the arm rather than the hand, and it's quite difficult to pose him in lightsaber battles because it will have a tendency to fall forward, so I'm relying on gravity in different points to create some fun displays, but that might just be mine. But nevertheless, all that being said, what a fantastic figure. I'm really, really impressed with this figure, and I think they've done a really nice job with it. Now, I definitely had nitpicks with it. I don't think the likeness is 100% there, but I think it's probably about 90% there. I think it's pretty good. I mean, it's definitely the best likeness of Mark Hamill I have on any of my other Luke Skywalker figures. I think this one's pretty good. I love the costuming, I love all the various accessories and the alternate costumes and the alternate looks we can create when we put this guy on display. He's just an absolute treat. So for me, I love this figure. I think they've done an absolutely splendid job. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like and remember to subscribe as there'll be plenty more videos soon.